Hello everyone. So you want to give it up pretty easy on this one? I will try. Yeah, it's working. Hello everyone. My name is Zhivorad Trajanovski, aka Zhika, and I'm here to talk about best practices in negative software testing. But before we start speak about this nowadays hot topic buzzword, it's an old topic but buzzword currently in the area of software testing, I would like to present my content. We will briefly introduce what negative software testing. We will do some comparison between positive and negative software testing, some benefits, and I will try to be a little bit smarter and will answer some questions, even though you will ask the questions on the end. I will try to give you some tips and tricks regarding conducting this technique in software testing. And even though I will speak during my presentation, I will give several examples. I have some slide before the conclusion. I will give there an overview of the examples. Probably this will bring us to the discussion. And last but not least, conclusion. After that, please prepare your comments, questions, and stuff like that. So, in your own opinion, in your own experience, what can be the negative testing, a negative test scenario, or something like that?
Everything that is different than the positive.
Yeah, opposite from the positive, right. I would say the second best thing after the positive corona test. Negative corona test is something similar like or negative software in software testing. According to Wikipedia, or the boring one, the boring definition, the negative software testing is a method of testing the application or the system that ensures the application, again, the system will work as expected and will handle the unwanted input from the user behavior. Also, invalid inputed data will not do harm on the application. But QA as a QA, we can give our overview and shorten this definition. And we can say that negative software testing or negative testing is a technique where QA performs actions that future potential users may do in order to gain some benefits, unwanted benefits from the application or the systems. For example, try to log in with incorrect credentials, try to log in, to complete a purchase or an order with invalid credit card, expired credit card, etc., etc. Before I continue with the theory, I would like to give you just an overview. Just like an illustration and example, what can be the negative testing? Everything in this amusement park is a positive testing, and because the outcome from playing in this amusement park is already known, for the kids we can consider as positive testing. On the edges, on the boundaries, on the borders of this park, there is the boundary values testing, or where the parents are sitting and waiting for the children to be done with their playing. Everything outside this playground can be considered and seen as a negative testing. Knowing this, and before I continue, since I already mentioned in my agenda, we will give something like comparison between negative and positive testing. Positive testing is good to mention that it's come with the verb that assumes. Negative testing considers. So before we proceed, we need some categories, and the first category is the app behavior, app or the system behavior. The positive testing here assumes that the application will behave as it is created, will behave regularly, and no surprises will be there. But the negative testing, on the other hand, considers that the application behavior can be changed. How can be changed? For example, another scenario here, one scenario here, it will be depending on the internet speed, how it will be open, how error handling will happen during slow internet connection, etc. The second category where we can compare the positive and negative testing is the user behavior. Positive testing, as I briefly mentioned, is that the users will come and use the applications only with their good intentions. But not all the users are good users, because the negative testing is saying that some users will consider that to input something invalid, or even to do some illegal actions in order to use the application in their benefit. So the application should or must deal with unwanted user activity here. The third final category here, of course there are a lot of categories, but those are top 3 categories in my opinion, is the data. Positive testing assumes that only valid test data will be provided, meaning valid credentials, valid credit cards, valid user data, in order to complete such an action. For example, in order to create a purchase, in order to create an order, everything will be valid from start till end. But the negative testing will consider the unexpected or the invalid data entered in the application. As I mentioned, for example, here there will be the scenario with the invalid or expired credit card provided from the user and trying to complete the order. Benefits from, benefits, there are a lot of benefits from conducting this technique during the software testing, but I will mention here the most important, at least the most important in my opinion, in my experience. We can talk about more benefits later. The first one, obviously, is improved QA skills and knowledge. Conducting this technology can be good for everyone in the team. QA engineers, software testers, if one of them conduct this technology, can become a master expert and then pass the knowledge to others. Another benefit is clean test data. What does this mean? Well, not all this test data that will be used and is using during the process of testing is clean. So the QA engineer, software tester, can distinguish the good and the bad test data and just simply say, guys, ignore the rest of the test data, of this test data. It's irrelevant, it's invalid, so we can keep the valid test data here. The third benefit is improved overall stability of the application or the system that is testing. When we are saying about stability, we can mention the performance, load performance of the application, the load of opening the pages, etc. Improve app system security. Mostly, the negative testing will lead us to finding some bugs or potential security issues. This means that this doesn't mean that the software tester or the QA engineer is a hacker or a cybersecurity expert. This can mean that a possible issue can be found during the testing, and as Simona already mentioned, it's cheaper to find the bug in earlier stages than later in the production. Another benefit, maybe clients will not agree with this, but company owners, as Simona or we as a QA engineers, is that the negative software testing will reveal new software testing and directions on the projects. If the security testing was not part of the strategy or the project, on the first hand, then the client can consider and ask for this. Last but not least, it's a client satisfaction. Of course, clients are tight with budgets, money, finance, and time. But if we point out the whole benefits and the strategy how we'll conduct the negative software testing, the client will be always satisfied. When and how, first part is it can be conducted. Well, it can be conducted in famous technique and known as exploratory testing. It can be conducted, how it can be conducted, manually or automatically by creating automation scripts. When? Every time when it's possible, because it's exploratory testing. Mostly it will be, because it's exploratory, it can be on the beginning of the project just to get familiar with the system and its functionalities. Second is the fuzz testing, or the fuzzing, known as widely known as fuzzing. It's a black box software technique where mostly our automation tools are used for fuzzing the application or providing some inputs and strings that can possibly find some leak of information or security breaches in the applications or the system. The third thing here where it can be conducted is speaking about boundary values. How? Again, manually and automatically by providing the inputs of the values and testing the, let's say, we have a form that this form can have multiple fields, and those fields are limited with the characters. For example, the first name can accept 16 characters, the second name can 25. So what will happen if we enter a little bit more than this character? This is a test case example that can be automated and easily translated into automation scripts. When every time when a new functionality will come on our plate. Input field testing also, it's a part of the negative software testing where the negative software testing, it can be conducted, and this is very useful for testing again the values of some input. For example, in the field for phone number, you will not be allowed to enter emojis or some letters, and when we try to submit this form, it shows us an error, of course. Comparison between front-end and back-end, correspondence, between front-end and back-end, meaning that everything is working on back-end, accepting 25 characters in a field or inputting emojis in some text box, text area, etc. It should be accepted in the back-end, and vice versa. If we accept 25 characters in some field, why we should accept more in the front end of the application. So correspondence is very important. So here it will be an example. Again, some field accepts entering 25 characters when the user will populate the form, but when we send a request via Postman, let's say, this field can accept more characters. That should not be the case. So correspondence between front end and back end, it's good. When? Every time when it's possible, especially when delivering new features. The second part of this question, when and how it stays for it can be tracked. So I will friendly recommend to track all these scenarios as you tracked all your test cases. It depends on you and as you agree with the client, but you can track in TestRail, for example, by choosing the type of scenario. If you're using X-ray like test management tool, because there is not, X-ray do not allow us to select the scenario, we simply can label the scenario as negative scenario. Always, I'm trying to separate the positive from the negative scenarios just because of reporting. You can classify the negative test scenario in one folder or in the folder with the other scenarios, but never miss the opportunity to relate with the ticket, especially with the user story tickets, features. Why? Because it's important to find the root cause in the future and to for better tracking. Well, we came to the most interesting part, tips and tricks that can be useful when conducting this technique. As I mentioned, creates a separate folder. This is very useful and user-friendly for those QA engineers. Why? Because not every time the project will have the same QA engineers. Maybe some will go out from the team, new QA engineers will come on the project. For easily navigating and managing, please keep the negative scenarios, testing scenarios, in separate folder. The second part is think upfront about the negative scenarios. Why? This is useful. Not every project manager or product owner will state this as acceptance criteria. Maybe if you have a user story where you can test a login form, we'll have separate acceptance criteria if you enter wrong credentials. An error message should happen, but that doesn't mean that this negative testing should stop there. Do not be stuck with the negative testing, but be creative and think more upfront about the scenarios, how they can be conducted, communicate more with us manual software tester, communicate with the QA engineers that are in the automation, just to know what can be automated, what cannot be automated. Use the flow-by-flow structure. What I mean by this is to test the whole flow. For example, the whole flow of registration, not only part of the form or the first page of the form. Just please try to complete the whole flow in order to see the bigger picture. Try to enter some invalid data, and when submitting this form or performing some other action, try to see where the flow will break. Always use reference. By reference, I mean the number of the tickets, user story, or the technical task that can be conducted, can be part of the testing. Why? Because it's always good for covering when we will do some report on the end of some cycle of testing. Future testing activities. Plan the future testing activities, because if you are stuck only with one action, like positive testing, you will not be able to consider and plan the future activities. Same goes with the negative testing. Just plan, be at least one step ahead with planning the future activities, like performing performance testing, maybe conducting more automation testing. Just be prepared with your scenarios. Future user activities. Try to imagine what will do the end user. Try to act more like end user when conducting this negative software testing technique, because when you will start to think like an end user or the user of the application, you will be more creative, more and more creative, and the negative testing scenarios will come in your head, even though they are not part of the acceptance criteria. This is very important. It's not last, but discuss and agree about the negative testing with everyone around you. This means internally with your team members, developers, project managers, product owners, and especially with the clients. As I mentioned before, clients are tied with the finance and time, so be prepared and prepare your argumentation and arguments when you will offer or suggest this to a client. Last but not least, do not reinvent the wheel. Meaning, if the client have some way to track and conduct this software testing technique, just try to improve, not to tell the client where the client is wrong. Just tell him or her what it can be improved, instead of doing something. Leave this one, you do not know anything, I will tell you what to do. No, just try to cope with the current flow. I mentioned some test case example, but to be honest, I didn't mention every one of them, everything of them. So I will try to briefly mention here some front-end test case examples, and later I will try to come with a back-end test case example. The first example, it will be create a user with an email address that already exists in the database. This is a example of negative software test, negative scenario where the user should expect and must see that error message email already exists in our system, in our database, etc., etc. Try to log in with wrong credentials, wrong password, for example. What you will expect? Of course, you should not be able to log in the application using wrong credentials, especially wrong password. Verify what will happen if the first name, last name fields, the user tries to submit some form where the first name and last name fields have some numbers, even emojis. Most of the forms will crash, and this can lead to crashing, to app crash, system, or even worse, system failure. So when performing negative software testing, if you include this scenario, it should throw some error or inline error, even inline error, informing the user that special characters like dollar symbol, exclamation mark, etc., like emojis, hearts, some other emojis are not accepted. The same goes with other fields that are not accepting letters. For example, our personal number or phone number should not accept letters. Phone number maybe will accept some letters, but not all of them. Or special characters like dash, like pound, etc. And the last scenario that came to my head when I prepared this presentation was verify if the user is able to complete an order with expired credit card. This is very good, in my opinion. This is very good scenario, negative test scenario, because if the user is able to submit an order, even though this credit card has some sufficient funds, but it's with expiry date, it should throw some error, or in our words, should not allow the user to finish the order. On the other hand, there are backend scenarios that we can perform using some tools like Postman, famously known as Postman, and that will be trying to log in with some expired token, try to see what will happen there, try to log in the application with the token from with user 1, but the token from user 2, most exciting one, and this should not allow you should not allow you to enter in the application. Another case where an error should be displayed. Complete an order with a user that has not saved any payment method, meaning the users can add the first payment method, but the users can have previously saved payment methods. But what will happen if the user does not have any payment method against his or her account? Of course, it should not allow the user, the system or the application should not allow the user to complete again the order. And last but not least, verify if a record will be saved in the database if the first name and the last name field during the registration contains some emojis or some invalid inputs. The database, everything in the database is strictly formed, and we have rules, so some special characters can break the database, and we should not allow this. Since we are till the end of this presentation, and it was really quick, it was that long, I will conclude this presentation with those final words. Negative software testing can be a great asset and can be useful for both sides, clients and engineers that are working on the project. It can be performed on both sides, front-end and back-end, and it can be used in legacy systems, on a mobile application, doesn't matter, it's a useful technique. It can be performed on a traditional manual way, or automated test scripts can be created and run later in order to conduct this technique. Can handle a lot. Can be hindered at the beginning. The clients can say this will take more and more time in future. But on a long run, try to convince the client, because this can bring some benefits like money saving, finding some better UX patterns will make the application and the system more secure and reliable for the end user. Always include the test scenarios in your test plan. Always try to convince your colleagues from the team. Always try to discuss about the consequences with the client if we are not using the negative testing scenarios. Those are very important. Maybe on the first look, it will not bring us any ideas why we should use that, but on a long run, it's very benefit. For the end, I will leave you with this great quote from a friend of mine. He said to me that good QA engineers creates and executes the negative testing scenarios, but the smart ones plan, create, executes, and point out the client benefits. So be a smart QA, refer those, tell those to your colleagues, QA colleagues, and be a smart QA, and plan, create, execute, and always point out the benefits. Those are our channel of communication. Feel free to reach out to us, and now Q&A session. Thank you.
Before I ask if there's any questions,
do not leave this guy to.
Is that friend who gave the quote here? No? He's not a great friend, then what can I say?
He's across the sea. Sorry.
Excuses. Only excuses.
Well.
Any questions for Zhivorad? Any comments?
Please do not leave him to send me questions.
I have one question. A great approach. I really like it. I have one question. The question is how you can measure, with this approach, how you can measure that you have acceptance criteria, that you reach the acceptance criteria for that product, since you just test the negative. You mainly focus on the negative cases and not mix with the positive.
Well. Well, first of all, I didn't not mention, maybe that's not my fault, you should not focus only on the negative testing scenarios, but you should put your focus if the negative acceptance criteria are not part of your, let's say, tickets or the documentation. As a software tester or QA engineer, you should be creative and invent them, offer them as a solution that can fix problems in future. So to answer your question, the measurement, it can be done on the end of the whole cycle, a sprint, maybe PI or the whole year itself. In the end, you can see how many bugs were discovered during the negative testing, and if it's useful, you can continue stick with this plan. But if it's not, you either disregard this approach or improve for future activities. So to answer again your question, you need some a whole process, a whole sprint, a whole PI, or maybe some time period like 4 months or 6 months or even a year in order to see the final results or the better picture of this technique. Thank you.
Yeah, because negative testing can be very, very creative. All the way, it's one of my favorite kinds, to be honest. Where do you draw the line between doing it manually and which scenarios to automate? Because it can be very broad. Like the positive scenarios, you know that they happen, you can automate them, but for the negative ones, it's very broad subject, so to say, and we all know that realistically we cannot automate
Great question. And yeah, negative software testing is very creative. I agree with that because it can you can be stuck in loop. Once you start, you can never finish. But there is always but. Depending on the project scope, depending on the project, let's say, environment and clients, maybe even our colleagues, please feel free to imagine, to suggest some percentage where you can first conduct your negative software testing. For example, if you have 70% positive scenarios that are already written down, 30%, the rest will be the negative. And I will say, depending on the time frame that the project should be pushed and delivered into production. You can always automate, and it's always good idea and good approach to start writing them as a scripts on the beginning. But again, if the time is out of essence, please do not do this. And if you do not have any luxury of time, please just be creative, and this 30% or even more, sometimes less, percentage, you should point out and be out loud saying that even though this is not acceptance criteria, I believe this can be a good and valuable point and valuable scenario to be tested. Why? Because I discovered, with this scenario, I discovered this and this bug. And this can be automated and can be run as an automated script in future.
Can I add one more comment about your question? It depends on the software you're testing. For example, if you're testing application which needs to have a payment, in that case, negative testing for expired card or for cards with less amount of money, it needs to be included. For example, in the project I'm working, we have those tests, like in the regression, all the time we have it, like, because this is really important. Depends on the criticality of the application. But for example, if you insert like more characters and if in the UI it's not present or not, this is not basically relevant. Depends on the application itself.
Yeah, I agree. It depends on the application, the business you're trying to test, or the purpose of the system that will serve the end users. That's a good point. Thank you very much. Guys, anyone else?
Maybe a question from my side.
No, again, not again.
Don't scare.
You said your whole approach here is actually to have negative testing as something separated or counted differently or measured differently from the rest of the testing.
Okay.
Do you think that's the best? Would you agree that that's maybe not the best approach, in a sense that I feel like negative testing is not something that we should be doing separately or considering something separate from the testing itself. Like, for me, negative testing is not its own entity, approach, practice, whatever you want to call it. It's something that we have to do. Like, there's no discussion about it. We can discuss how much can we do it. That refers to the question already asked. Let's face it, it's always about the money. Like, how much money does the client have that will calculate into time that you can spend? But for me, even tracking negative testing scenarios is something that it's maybe redundant. Like, that has to be a part of acceptance criteria. That's something that has to be included during the refinement sessions. Like, I would be very uncomfortable if we let a feature go into the development before we defined at least some basic, how to handle some basic negative scenarios. So basically my question here is, do you consider it as a separate approach from the rest of the testing that you do? Or would you say that, or would you agree that it's only a significant part of the whole testing process itself?
Although it can be tracked in separate folders, yes, it is, and it should be for the whole process. But try to tell the project owners, product owners, project managers to include those acceptance criteria, because not every time the project has a luxury to include at least one QA in the refinement session or stuff like that in order to conclude the final acceptance criteria. Even though, again, the negative test scenarios is good to be a separate folder, it can be a turn in your eye when you open the whole structure. They should, or even it's a strong word, but they must go hand in hand with the rest of the testing. Why? In order to deliver more quality, because Q in QA stands for quality, not for quantity.
Yeah, if I may add to this one. So our practice in our company is that negative test cases are included into the functional test cases. So it's not a matter of if someone wants to do it or they accept it. It just something is. Because maybe, I don't know the practice that you guys have, but we tend to, when the project starts, we tend to, with an exclamation, say, hey guys, we expect the developers to test the positive scenarios, because we feel that the positive scenarios should already be been checked by the developer that created the code before it comes to us. So if we just do the same thing the developer does,
it's a repeatable job, and again, Q in quality, in QA stands for quality,
yes.
and we should be more careful but creative when comes to this.
Yes. So I agree with you 100%. Negative testing is a must, and I think that if we allow for someone to tell us that it shouldn't be conducted or created, this means that they just don't want any kind of quality, in my personal opinion.
Yeah, and experience too. If, like you said, the positive scenarios or the positive ones can be repeated by us because sometimes, more of the times, developers did. But what will happen if we did do some opposite thing of the developer?
Yes.
And that is known as negative testing.
Yes.
So
Yes.
thank you for the comment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to add to this discussion. I think that you
Yeah.
covered very well the answers, what I have in mind to comment. But
Wow.
yes, I agree, especially with, depending, I would say, with the client, and Simona, maybe you will agree, because there is the clients, if they don't like negative testing, of course you will offer it, but they don't say, okay, we don't like to pay about this, especially in timing, because it knows to be time consuming, you mentioned this, and then you give priority to the positive testing due to you must to know that the user can log in, no matter, you must to work on that positive case that must work, no matter if the developer has tested. And just to finish, it's like, I agree with you, it's more about the time and budget. Of course, it's our job to offer and maybe also to push a little bit this negative testing. But in the end of the day, if it comes to a software, which came that from negative testing, that doesn't bring that much critical Looker issues due to this is the end point, then we also should think about this negative. Are they really that much important? They are important, I agree, just not to have here. But again, depending on the client, again, depending on the project, you mentioned that we are working for everyone. Not for everyone, this negative testing will bring critical blocker issues. And if we are very tight on timing, if we are very tight on budget, then limited, then really what we need to do is the positive, to make sure that the positives are there. And then, of course, when time and if time, we will do our negative test. This is how it's.
Yeah, and I will add just that the time will allow the clients to reconsider their tactics and their approach during the launching.
Yeah.
And they will find, sooner or later, they will find out that those words are not empty words, and those suggestions are not just to keep them longer in our company, just to build them. This is something that is that happens a lot of the time, but in the end, they will say, eventually they will say and will add something more. Well, guys, you have 2 weeks, 2 months, I don't know. Just try to break down the application and see what's wrong, and if it's a critical, we will not go and we will not ship the application or the system. If it goes that much percent, let's say 50% good, we will give you extra time to fix this, but do not continue with the negative scenarios. But again, eventually it comes to some point that when the client will rethink their strategy.
I have a question for you. In which phase of the QA process do you think that is best time to act?
As soon as possible. Yeah, as I mentioned, the login form will not be developed, or it will be maybe developed on the end of the project, but it not make sense, right? The login form, it will be on the beginning on the project. Rather is a login form for the application, the queue system, etc., etc. So try to conduct as soon as possible, be creative, and because it's a good practice where it can be conducted in the exploratory testing, when you're include in getting familiar with the application, that means on very early beginning of the testing, please feel free to try to throw scenario or two during the beginning. Later, the scenarios will come to your head. Later, the scenarios will come in the tickets as acceptance criteria. So as soon as possible, it will be my answer. Thank you for the question.
Any more questions, comments? Going once? Oh, so
Do you have? Yeah, I'm coming from different backgrounds. I'm not a developer. I'm a business owner. I do work with some software companies.
let me just hide.
So, do you use some sort of list that you apply to all the tests? And is there a Bible of testing methods or practices?
Yeah, so someone will say there is a Bible, there is some guide that will be a good point to start testing the product, with the testing on the product, to start torture the application or the system. But the practice, at least in my case and in my experience, said that most of these books or guides are completely wrong. Why? Because the creativity is on the tester, the budget is on the client, and the other colleagues, when it comes to project managers, product owners, and the developers, everything, it will be defined on the table when you start working or when you start the test. Maybe one characteristic or two, or maybe even 90% of the characteristic in this Bible, as you mentioned, it will be useful for you, and you will recognize during the testing. But the order will be different. That I can guarantee you. So feel free to ask one software tester and another software tester. They have different opinions when it comes to regression testing, how it can be conducted. Should we automate completely, or should we automate as time and budget allows us?
And one more question, like in your business cases, before you start testing the product, there is the idea, the design, and what needs to happen. Do you get, like Simona mentioned, you need to get a great research before you start the work. So do you get buyer persona for your project actually from the customer? Because I think that's the most important part, is the end user, or however you call it.
Yeah, you should try to research the area you will test. For example, I was testing a lot of e-commerce sites. I was testing technologies like chargers for cars. I'm testing kitchen appliances now, and I am trying to think like the end user. So if I don't know what's air fryer, for example, I cannot test the air fryer or the functionality in the air fryer. If I do not know that the air fryer is a kitchen appliance, I will not say, happy birthday, honey, with this air fryer. What's this? This is air fryer. What's the purpose of this? If I do not know to explain to another person what's the purpose, I cannot test it. So I need to have some knowledge previously to research, to watch some videos, to read some articles, to even read the guide from the guideline from the manufacturer of that air fryer, and to dive deep into the, of course, not to lose too many time, but you should be familiar with those terms.
You get those ideas as a buyer persona from the designers of the product, which is a document we use usually for. We do our own testing, but it's marketing. It's broader than that. So,
if I can jump in here, basically,
feel free.
Usually, to answer your question, that's something that we usually do even before the development starts. We have this is where our design team actually gets very much involved. We always try to do several in-depth workshops with potential clients to see what do they want, what do they think they want, what do they actually want. But after we're done with that, we actually try to do user testing or usability testing with some very rough mocks to see actually what would the targeted audience or the targeted users, what and how would they react. Basically, based on that data, we start the planning of the development, and what we are trying to do in the past, I would say 3 years, is the shift left approach. So we try to be, as a QA team, included as early as possible in that process. That's actually even in the workshops phase, and that's where you start to gather bits and pieces of information. So by the time you actually start testing the product, you actually do know who are you testing for and what that user expects. However, that comes with a caveat, which you need to be careful of, not to focus only on that, because there will be users who are not the targeted audience, but they will still use the app, so, or your any product, web app, mobile app, etc. So, short answer: we try to do it as early in the stage as we can.
And these users, I believe, we are calling them haters.
I won't say that. That's your opinion.
That's one way.
Any other questions, comments?
Yeah.
Referring to the conversation we had about positive and negative testing, because I don't know, you have mentioned the different types of clients. Maybe did you have some experience with a client that asked you only to perform positive kind of tests? Because for me, the positive and negative testing, it goes all together.
It goes all together, and it must be. As harsh as it can sound, it must go all together. And there was this client, if I may give an example, that firstly, the person, I will say, I will refer him, he asked us a couple of times during the dailies, why did you waste time testing when it's not wrote in the acceptance criteria? Because usually this type of clients, they are going by the book. They do not know that there is something else besides those facts that are written down. Probably they stick to the time frame. The time frame that was defined and the budget. They always 99% of the time they think that this can be a disruption of their time frame or their budget, or together time frame and the budget. So after a couple of sprints, he started to notice the benefits. Like I said, you need a couple of sprints, a PI, maybe some period of time to start to pull out the, let's say, the reports, to generate the reports, because regarding this scenario, negative tested scenario, this bug came out. And if we did not perform the negative scenarios, the bug will not appear. So after a couple of months on that project, he always finished the dailies. What's the next negative? When you will start negative testing? Can I can I take notes from you guys? Can I participate in this, something like war room testing, etc., just with negative testing? But we try to explain him that negative testing is not something apart that can be done and conducted. It should go all together during the whole process of testing.
Now, actually, that is the point of QA.
Actually, yeah.
Okay, I would say that's it. Thank you, Zhika.
Thank you very much.